What's going on, everyone? Camille here, back for Week 6 MLS picks, and I'm rocking the Poland jersey for this show. They just qualified over Wales for one of the last Euro spots, one of the last chance qualifiers, in a crazy game, crazy penalty shootout, and yeah, so definitely in a really happy mood for this show. And yeah, let's just get right into it. If you tailed last week's show, the first week of it that I've done, it was pretty kind to us. We had a lot of plus money spots, 7-6 overall. And if you just held the best bets, we went 3-1 with a couple plus money cashes in there too. Almost a sweep. Vancouver couldn't get through for us. Really disappointing to watch that one slip because they were up 1-0 at home against RSL side who had just lost to the Rapids, and they kind of just decided to sit on that lead and were punished. Took off a couple of their best players with like half an hour to go, and just not really what you want. Not really a winning strategy, so kind of worrying there, but nonetheless, still 3-1 for the best bets. Cincy won. They squeaked by NYCFC, who offered nothing in attack on the other end. Finally got their first home win. And then Orlando Austin, a pretty easy under. Austin really offered nothing as well. Didn't even get like a quarter of XG. Just typical things out of them. And the St. Louis DC over 3 bet was already pushing at half. And then we ended up getting that fourth. So really, really good start to the show. I hope to keep that going for you guys and just trying to give my best looks and analysis on games. And yeah, hopefully keep this going. And one more note before we get ahead into these picks. The referee strike is over for MLS, and the main referees are expected back this weekend for games. So definitely was a lot of variance and external factors with these replacement refs. We hate to like talk about refs a lot and like kind of blame that for losses or wins or whatever, and just have that be part of the conversation. But I think that these refs are really, really bad overall, and there were a lot of VAR decisions and whatnot that saved them from even more embarrassment. And yeah, so as much as I like hate to say it, it's good. It's really good that we're getting these refs back, and it should lead to more exciting gameplay, and they'll be able to keep up with the game, obviously, since they've had the experience in the league. And yeah, so really looking forward to a normal looking league and getting on with things for real this time. So first game here between the Union and Minnesota United, and I'm going to be going with Philly Union to win on the money line. And this is kind of like my juice tolerance here at -130. But I really like the Union in this spot because they're coming off a huge road win at the Timbers, 3-1, in which, as we talked about on the last show, they were missing 5 or 6 pieces. We had the over in that game that hit with ease, but they had so many of these pieces out, and it was a relatively straightforward and comfortable win. They were leading the whole time. And I think that's a huge boost for this team who was really struggling to start the year, especially defensively. And now you just won a game like that with your reserves out, and you're getting all these, key guys back. I think this is a really good turnaround spot for them to string a couple wins together, especially get their first win at home. And I like most of these guys that are coming back to actually start and play, right away again, because most of them played their international games in the States, and not many of them really played huge minutes combined in those. So compared to Minnesota, I think Pukki and Lod for Finland, they played a lot, and it's a longer trip back from Europe. So I'm not sure if they start, but they could feature, and that also plays into this price, I think. I think that's why we're seeing a little bit of juice on this money line for the Union. But I'm going to bite, and I just think that the numbers suggest that the Union's defense has been underperforming, and I expect Curtin to kind of get this core group of guys going again and on the right track. And Minnesota's defensive numbers really poor, actually. They are undefeated, but they're top third worst in expected goals allowed. They're giving up double in that stat compared to what they've actually allowed to go in the back of the net. So I think this Union attack, it can pounce on that and actually convert on their chances compared to other teams who have underperformed their XG against Minnesota so far, such as Austin on the road, or when they played Austin on the road, they still allowed Austin to score, but Austin's obviously just a horrible attack. And Orlando City, who they won 3-2 against on the road, gave up 2 still. Orlando created over 3 expected goals. So it's not like Minnesota's just, compact and not giving up chances themselves. Second game on the schedule between Rapids and LAFC. This is one of the 2 early slate games on Saturday before the main slate in the evening. So I'm going to take the under here. Rapids are just a pitiful team, man. Like, I didn't like the signings in the offseason. They didn't really move me. I expect this team to be bad once again. And yeah, just super inconsistent, super confusing, because you go and win 3-1 at RSL, have this great performance, and then you can't even score against Houston at home and lose the game. So I don't know. This is just a really bad team. I don't trust their attack at all. And on the other hand, LAFC is just not a good road team at all in their short history. Their home and road forms are just 2 completely different tales. And in 2 road games this season, LAFC hasn't scored yet. So this home advantage is still real for Colorado, regardless of what the final result is, like last week. And I'm not going to overreact to LAFC's 5-0 win from last week at home. So Buenga, great for him to get off the mark, but this attack still has real questions, and I don't think Colorado is just gonna allow LAFC to play the way they want completely, or have this be another blowout, especially on the road. So LAFC, they just signed Giroud. That's been confirmed. That's final stages of that, and he's gonna come sometime in the late summer. But for now, this attack isn't gonna be that what it can be, and especially on the road, I'm gonna trust. I like this price here, and I don't think LAFC's defense on the other end is also gonna allow Colorado to just kind of have this outburst. Third game on the schedule between Charlotte and Cincinnati, and this is one of 4 of my best bets for this show. I'm gonna try to make that clear as we go along each of these games. But first one here, I'm gonna take the under 2.5. And I love this. I mean, both of these teams are top 5 in expected goals allowed, so 2 of the best defenses in the league. Cincy has the least goals allowed with just 2 in 5 games so far, and both of those have come on the road, but I really trust this team to clamp it down, especially knowing they're on the road. And Celentano is just a really great goalkeeper in general, so he can save them out of some spots. And this team has just become comfortable since last year under Pat Noonan, just playing in these tight games, winning 1-goal games, and yeah, just playing that style. So on the other end, Charlotte, they're 2 for 2 at home in terms of clean sheets and wins. So they're not even blowing teams out either when they're keeping these clean sheets. And Charlotte, obviously, as we discussed last week, just one of the worst places to play for a road team. And Cincy, both of their road games have gone over, but they played against the Fire and New England, who the Fire are giving up. Their games have just been bangers in general, and New England was just they're in a really bad spot right now. So 3 of Cincy's 4 road goals came on set pieces, such as corners, and one of them was an Acosta free kick. So they have a really set pieces are crucial for road teams in general, but they've really been over-relying on these set pieces. And honestly, in my eyes, it's been kind of just these blunders from the other teams that have allowed these goals to go in, instead of just kind of Cincy's set piece, mastery. But I'm going to take my chances here in that regard. Like, if they pull out a couple set pieces again, then so be it. But nothing suggests to me that this should fly over or be end-to-end. Both these teams are really struggling with their chance creation. Charlotte might be getting Copetti back, but since he's just obviously the most sound defensive team right now, and on the road, I expect them to clamp that up even more and try and scrape out another result. Next game up is DC United versus Montreal. and I'm going to be taking DC to win here. I think this could definitely be a shootout. Both of these teams have been in some crazy games to start the season, especially Montreal, but I like DC at home here. I think they just have too much firepower for Montreal to deal with. They're getting a lot of pieces back. They just got Stroud back against St. Louis. He kind of filled in on the right and helped with that kind of wingback role with both the wingbacks out. But now those wingbacks are returning. Santos from the red card suspension and Herrera from the break, and that's really going to help contribute to how they really want to play and on the wings and feeding Benteke with crosses. And I think with a full strength DC team at home coming off a result like this is a really good spot to take. They're obviously allowing goals on the other end, but I trust them in a shootout here. And Montreal, they've pulled out some really good results, but they played teams like Orlando who haven't looked good to start the season. They held that to 0-0 on the road. Orlando, though, one of the top teams in not taking advantage of the actual chances they're creating, which is a lot. And Dallas as well, they pulled out a win at Dallas, but Dallas obviously also they are kind of uncomfortable in what they're trying to do and haven't created as much in general. So against these teams that are kind of unsure of themselves to start the season, they've really benefited. And that's not to take away from Montreal, but it's just that they're kind of trying to counter and they're not as progressive and intentional with the ball in terms of possession. So I think DC can really take it to them and not fall into a deficit. And if they take a lead, then it's just this might get pretty ugly to me. So I really like DC here. Miami versus NYCFC here. This is pretty straightforward for me. I'm going to be taking Miami to win. Coming off a really disappointing loss to Red Bulls, but this is a complete 180 to this New York team, who once again just really bad, really struggling, scoreless on the road in 3 games, offering nothing, and you can see that against Cincinnati, one of the East's top teams. Even though they couldn't create, they still got away with that win. And against Cincinnati, they really just tried to play for that draw. And against the Miami attack that's clicking much more, especially at home, a really motivated team coming off that loss, I think this could get pretty ugly early. And I think the price is what it is. It's taking into account that they have the game traveling to Monterey midweek, which they could. Usually it would be a look-ahead spot, but I think that they're going to want to get going again here and feel a little bit more confident going into that game. So they're also getting a couple young midfielders back from the break and Callender's back in goal, so that's huge for them if NYCFC does maybe get a couple good looks, since they're giving up a lot of XG, but this should be a pretty handy win. Moving on to Orlando City versus New York Red Bull. I'm going to be taking both teams to score here. Orlando getting a couple key pieces in attack back from the break. That includes Duncan McGuire and Facundo Torres, both of which only played one of their 2 games during the break, so they should be ready to go fresh and back into the lineup. And obviously Red Bull's getting Forsberg back. They're also coming off that 4-0 win against Miami, so they're still looking good without him, which really surprised me. That was a really telling and dominant performance. And you're just putting Forsberg right back in there to work with Lewis Morgan and Van Zier in attack. They're really been impressive with their pressing. So Orlando's still a lot of questions defensively. Picked up that clean sheet against Austin, but that's really nothing. That's not much to speak of because anyone could hold Austin to a clean sheet. And outside of that game, they've given up. They're one of only a handful of teams to give up double-digit goals so far this season. So still not believing in this defense. They still need to fix some things. I think Red Bulls can make this a match on the road. Orlando City obviously getting that home bump, and I just believe in this attack more. I think Pareja has been experimenting a lot with the formation and the 2 strikers, and McGuire being back really sets up well for Muriel to work as well. And yeah, I just see both scoring. This could be a 1-1. I don't want to add that 3rd goal because Orlando's still they're one of the best teams in terms of their attacking stats, but not putting away those goals. So while it should be an Orlando City win in my eyes, I don't want to trust them on the money line here. Next up is Toronto FC facing Sporting Kansas City, and this is going to be my second best bet of this show. I'm going to take Kansas City actually on the draw no bet. I really like this price and this value, and these are two teams who have been very defensive minded. They've played in some low scoring games, so the under could be a good play here. But I'd rather take a side here. I'm liking Kansas City in this spot with Insigne out for Toronto. Toronto's been very reliant on him and Bernardeschi for chance creation. They've pulled out some really tight wins just because of their individual brilliance. But aside from that, I don't see how this Toronto team will break down Kansas City. Kansas City has played some really, really good road games so far. They played 2 draws, 1 to LAFC and 1 to Dynamo. And so they've played these teams really tough on the road, better chance creating teams, and now they're coming up against Toronto, who I don't expect to pour it on. They obviously beat Atlanta at home last week, but they were very shorthanded. And yeah, I think the lineup tinkering, especially last week, to the 4-2-3-1 for KC really unlocked some of that offensive potential, and I think they have a more proven front line group, and that has spent more time together. And ultimately, I just think besides that Galaxy collapse, they only allowed 2 goals in the 4 games previously, and that's just credit to the Galaxy because they can score 2 or 3 on any team in the league. As we've seen, it doesn't matter what position they're in, if they're losing or what have you. They came back from 2-0 and scored 3. So kind of just have to single that out as an outlier and kind of look at this KC team as what it really is. Next up is a Texas rivalry between Austin and Dallas. And this is probably one of my crazier picks of the week. But I'm going to have a little bit of faith in both of these teams. I'm going for both the score and over 2.5. It's some plus money, so that really intrigued me. And listen, both these teams bottom 3 in expected goals so far. For Austin, it's just really more of the same from last year, as we've seen. On the road, they're just dismal, really not even creating literally anything, even in the statistical part. But at home, they've played 2-2 draws, so and they've scored in every home game, so they're clearly getting a little boost there. Obviously, MLS teams have better performances at home, just in general, but I'm believing in this Austin side. And Dallas, on the other end, hasn't been really as sound defensively as we've really expected them to be or used to them being. So I'm going to think that both of these teams can really think that they can take the 3 points off of each other, and we see a better game here. I don't have any weather concerns or anything like that. But Driussi for Austin just got his first match under him against Orlando, so he's really getting back to that really full match fitness. And if they really need him to start, running things, in the attacking phase. And Dallas on the other end, I think the week off really might have helped them just get more connected, especially between Ferreira and Musa. And I think if there's ever a time to, get going and feel a little bit more confident about your setup here, it's against an Austin team. So this could have a sneaky potential for a slight shootout, where at least, both to score. Maybe we get a third goal here. Another West Coast battle here, Houston Dynamo hosting the San Jose Earthquakes, and I'm going to be taking the Earthquakes on the double chance or plus a half, whatever you want to call it. And yeah, Houston coming off a pair of really stingy wins, coming off most recently 1-0 at Rapids, which was a little unexpected, but Rapids, as we talked about, just really uninspiring. So credit to Houston, a huge 3 road points, but they're missing a lot of pieces still. Carrasquilla was on the international break. He might be coming back here, but I don't expect him to start. He played 2 full 90s over the break in the course of about 4 days, so it might be a little bit of a rough turnaround. And just in general, they're not creating as much as they have been, especially with the pieces they lost over the offseason. So they're top 3 in possession, but they're really not doing that much with it. They're in the bottom third in progression and expected goals, so struggling to break teams down, even though they want to have the ball a lot. And I think that kind of suits San Jose, who are a little bit more confident right now, coming off their first 3 points of the season against Sounders. They looked really more dynamic in attack with that kid Nico slotting in there, opening up more spaces for everyone else. And yeah, this is just kind of a price that's really surprising to me. I know Houston, just in general, is really tough to play against when they're at home, but San Jose, I think they're realizing their potential a little bit more now, and they are a little bit more intentional with what they're doing with the ball, and I think they can hit Houston on the counter here, and especially with Houston just struggling to create in general. They haven't put more than one past anyone at home this season. This could be a tight match, or San Jose maybe a sneaky win here. I mean, they haven't won here in a long time, but there's just more. They just offer more in attack for me. Heading over to an Eastern Conference matchup between Nashville and the Crew, and this is actually going to be my third best bet of the show. I'm going with both teams to score and over 2.5 for plus money, which to me is really crazy because Nashville is third worst in expected goals allowed. They're really leaking right now. And even besides that 5-0 like thrashing by LAFC last week, they just lost their best center back Zimmerman for about a month. So I'm really going to keep attacking that for now. They just look really suspect in the back. And Columbus, on the other hand, they just haven't been as controlling and dominant on the road as they have been at home, and we've seen that. I mean, I think they deserved a lot more from the Charlotte match. They got a couple, VAR and other decisions that didn't go their way, but they're definitely still more vulnerable on the road. And a big part of this is that Nashville hasn't looked really great offensively, but they have, contributed at home every game. And Columbus is missing one of their starting center backs, Camacho, due to injury. So I see both teams scoring here. This could be a little bit of a look-ahead spot for Crew, who are playing Tigres midweek after this game, but they'll be at home for that game, so I don't think they're going to rotate too much. And they're getting a couple key pieces back in Morris and Russell Rowe, who didn't play too much over the break, and I think they'll want to get them a little bit more acclimated ahead of that game. And so I can definitely see both teams scoring here, and definitely one of these teams can get us a third for this type of value. Moving on to Real Salt Lake taking on St. Louis City in what I think is the first rematch of any teams this season. It's really early, actually, obviously, and yeah, these teams met a couple weeks ago and played out to a 1-1 game over in St. Louis. And I'm going to take the under 3 here. I think that aspect of it really makes these teams a little bit more comfortable with what they're going up against. They're used to it. It's going to be fresh on their minds. And Real Salt Lake has been especially in the top third of expected goals allowed. So their defense has been really solid so far. They've played a lot of their games have gone over, same as St. Louis's, especially St. Louis, as they've just been end to end. But I think Real Salt Lake can lock it down a little, and I think both these teams like pressing a lot and keeping spaces congested so that it doesn't free up for either team. And a big thing I'm looking at as part of this is the weather, because there's expected to be a lot of heavy rain, and I don't expect that to change. And a lot of Salt Lake games are like that. We obviously had the snowstorm a couple weeks ago there against LAFC, and somehow that went 3-0 still. But regardless, I'm going to have the weather, go in our favor, and I'm going to get that push protection here for the under 3. Sticking to the West Coast here with Galaxy taking on the Sounders. And this is pretty straightforward for me. Again, I'm taking Galaxy to win. Still the best attack, still the most threatening. Come back from 2-0 down to KC on the road for just a really, really good road win. Still undefeated. And yeah, but they're still looking for that first home win. And obviously at home, this is just a team this attack's going to be even more inspired, even more boosted. And Seattle, on the other hand, just still winless. Just got 3 put past them in San Jose, which is really, really concerning. They have a lot of players missing right now, and I'm sure they'll come into their own later in the season. But they just don't offer enough right now for me to feel, uncomfortable about taking the Galaxy. The only problem with this I kind of have, or I can see, this being less of a productive game just overall from the Galaxy is the weather report, because there should be some sort of rain. It just depends, how much and how often. It's kind of still in the air right now. So regardless, I prefer the ML over the team total or anything like that. I think they'll probably still need to win this, because they're just have that Achilles heel on the defensive side. But man, like, how can you not take a price like this? Vancouver hosting the Timbers here, and these are two teams that are hard to like feel comfortable with right now. They're two teams that aren't managing games well, or at least more recently. I talked about Vancouver at the beginning of the show. We had them as our best bet last week, and they just kind of try to stick out a 1-0 win at home when they can really offer more and they have the pieces to close out games. And then Timbers, on the other hand, they were kind of overperforming, I think, for most people and what the stats showed at the beginning of the season. They missed a lot of great chances last week against the Union, but ultimately ended up losing to a very shorthanded, Philly team, and only score one at home against them, who have been really struggling on the defensive side of the ball. So Phil Neville talked about his team, having to get that mentality to, win games and tough those kinds of games out. Vancouver on the other side, they have those pieces, but cannot be giving away leads like that. They're giving away two now, and end up losing that game to RSL. So regardless of all of that, I'm still gonna trust Whitecaps here again. It might bite me again, but I think Pico is gonna be back. That helps them a lot on the wings, and just with their link ups. And just in general, the Whitecaps have been top 2 or 3 all season in expected goals allowed. So I think a Timber side that's been a little bit due for some regression in the attacking phase, coming on the road to Vancouver. It shouldn't be as much of a shootout or free flowing as they've had in their opening games. And it might take a little bit more time for Rodriguez and all them to mesh a little bit. So I'm going to take Vancouver here again, but a little bit cautiously. Closing out the show with what I think should be a banger here. I'm going for the over 3. This is my last best bet and last game of the show, but last best bet. Atlanta United hosting the Chicago Fire. And yeah, this is pretty easy pick, pretty good value, I think, for this push protection here. I think we should get a third goal. Chicago Fire really surprising me this season. They've hit the over in all but one game, their most recent game, which we had the both teams to score an over 2.5 on, but I think that didn't hit more due to the weather, which played a factor. That heavy rain, it was 1-1 early, and then didn't get anything in the second half. But regardless, they're top 5 or 6 in both expected goals and expected goals allowed. And Atlanta, on the other hand, we know what they are at home. Very dominant. They can pile the goals on. They dismantled Orlando, dismantled New England. But the Fire on the road, obviously, as we discussed before, have been scoring. They scored in every road game. And yeah, I think 3 goals should be easy here. And we get that push protection. So just hoping for a 4th. And I think that extra day of rest, as this is the only Sunday game on the schedule, will do a lot for players such as Giacomakis, Almada, and all those Atlanta United players trying to return and getting back into the squad right away, starting. So even with Shaqiri returning back at that 10 role, I don't think that causes too much problems for Chicago. I still think they get on the score sheet here. They've clearly, figured a lot of things out on the road, and getting crucial points there. And yeah, even if they don't, I think Atlanta can win this game and should win this game, and they can run away with it themselves anyways. So it should be full strength for both of these sides, and the numbers just suggest, the play suggests, I test everything that, yeah, this is going to be a really exciting match as the standalone match for the end of the week. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you like this video and content, please make sure to like and subscribe. And I hope that if you do decide to tell, that wishing you the best of luck regardless of your bets, and yeah, that you just enjoy this match week. It should make for some really good viewing in general, as most of these teams are going to have their full squads back, just depending on certain rotations, and the refs are back, so hopefully not much to talk about on that end. Hopefully they make good decisions and everything's back to normal, but also hoping to make a recap video possibly after this weekend's over and the matches. And regardless of that, just getting back into the full swing of things week by week, making these videos. And yeah, once again, best of luck, and I'll talk to you for match week 7.